Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Ship Safely podcast. I'm Sebastian, your host, and today we're joined by Mike O'Keefe, Head of Sales and Customer Success at Immunefi. And probably everyone watching this knows that Immunefi is the leading bug bounty program for anything on chain and also off chain. And Mike himself is playing a very important role at Immunefi. But early in his career, he started with financial services and tech, where he had operations and investment roles, and then moved into customer success, first at Adevar and later as head of client success at Canute. And he even founded his own business before jumping into Web3. So now he's helping, all the Web3 protocols have a higher level of security through world-class bug bounties. Immunefi itself has paid over 120 millions to white hacks and bounties of more than 500 protocols. And they recently launched Magnus, which is an AI-driven command center for anything security on chain. Mike, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sebastian. Really appreciate it, and happy to join the show. I've been a longtime fan since the first episode weeks ago. So, no, honored to be one of the initial guests, and excited to chat with you.
Awesome, awesome. Well, to kick things off, the first thing I ask every guest is, what should people take from this episode? Why should they stay? Why should they listen?
Yeah, sure. Because I'll have the most insightful knowledge that they can take away. But in all seriousness, I think the reason to listen to things like this is that the industry is evolving so quickly. There's so many points of view, especially when it comes to security and shipping safely, as the program is so aptly named, that I don't know that there will be a conversation based on the guests that Adevar will have, maybe aside from myself, that aren't going to bring a valuable security consideration. So even if you take the time just to listen to each episode and take one thing away from it, that's one extra thing that's going to keep you safe out there in a world with some scary things that could happen.
I think that's a pretty cool thing to take away. So moving to the first, part of our podcast where we offer some context. You have worked in both traditional finance and client success outside of Web3. And looking back on those roles, what is something that was super easy to carry over and has helped you in your current role in Web3 at Immunefi? And what was something that you needed to completely unlearn in this space?
Yeah, it's the thing I think that is I've been able to take with me every step of the way from like traditional finance, especially starting during the financial crisis in 2008, 2009, to moving into software as a service and dealing with customers and now doing the same in the Web3 space, both on the sales and the customer success side, is that human nature doesn't necessarily change. The approach is always and will always be start with what the customer needs and work backwards from there, and you'll never go wrong. And so the human nature hasn't changed, even though the businesses that I've worked in have quite a bit. So those tenants is just like start with what's the customer pain, work backwards from there, and say how can I help, rather than sort of foisting your own ideals or your own specific solutions onto them. That's for later. In terms of what I had to sort of forget is expectations when I moved into the Web3 crypto space on two fronts. The first is security is a totally different animal, right? The stakes are, I had high stakes in other jobs in terms of personal information, the types of institutions I was dealing with, the fact that it was other people's money and their livelihood. Some of that hasn't changed, but the stakes are very different when you're talking about security, and anything that might slip through the cracks can be absolutely devastating in seconds or minutes. So that's the first thing, is just being hyper vigilant in those, and exercising and building those security muscles. The other is that the space is still nascent, and so it moves so quickly. So my career has gotten progressively more exciting. It went from, wealth preservation and planning, which is super important, into, building out tools that large financial institutions can use coming off archaic software. Now we're really in a greenfields. So everybody needs the next solution tomorrow or yesterday. And sometimes we don't know what that is, and you have to right size it and figure it out on the fly. So I've built those muscles in past lives, but maybe the stakes weren't so high, and maybe the answers were a little bit more clear than they are here in Web3 security. Thankfully, with companies like Adevar and companies like Immunefi and many others, we have those answers, and we are able to take the green fields and project out and figure out what people are going to need tomorrow, next quarter, next year, maybe even 18, 36 months from now.
Definitely. That's really cool. Sort of double clicking on that. I imagine that for you, like sales playbooks in Web3 are very different from, like what a traditional SaaS playbook would look like. How has your personal approach, and has it even like changed since you joined Web3 and Immunify?
Yeah, I think it has. You're constantly learning things, and so are the customers and prospects. So the first is, going back to my first point, the tenants from a high level have not changed, which is just to start with the customer pain point and figure out what that is with them, and then just figure out how you're going to solve it. In most cases, people, at the end of the day, yes, they care how you solve it, but not to the degree I think you think they care. It's just, is the problem solved? I always go back with my teams to, uh, I did not invent this analogy, but they might be asking you for a shovel, but what they really need is for you to dig a hole. They don't really care if you use a shovel, a backhoe, or your hands at the end of the day. In most cases, it's up to you to refine that after you solve the problem for them in some cases, especially when we're moving so quickly in this space. Thankfully, we've got some tools. You've got expertise and tools over at Adevar where you don't have to use your hands. You can use pretty elegant solutions, which we can talk about potentially later here. The customer success side is really broadly the same. The biggest thing is everyone's moving so fast and everyone's remote and decentralized that you're not in front of people as often as you used to be. So every interaction matters a whole lot more. So you think about, in old school industries, people talk about the elevator pitch. It really is that, except now sometimes you're doing it over Telegram quickly, or you're doing it in passing, maybe at a conference, that's your best shot, or over coffee at a conference, or getting on a phone call with someone. But we live in a generally increasingly async world, and people just want you to be able to articulate your value as quickly and succinctly as possible so they can move to the next important thing. So that's the biggest change.
Yeah, no, that definitely resonates with what I've seen as well. And I think that is a very good segue to the next part and the next question that has to do with the product that you've recently launched. Actually, it was a few months ago, but you know, uh, it's still recent, right? So we're talking about Magnus here, which brings security workflows and makes the very nascent industry of Web3 a bit more mature. So, from a customer success perspective, what do you think protocols were sort of like begging for? Like you mentioned the shovel before, and what led you to push this product forward?
Yeah, I think it's twofold, right? There's the macro sense of what is happening in the industry that's most dangerous, right? And it's still the things that existed previously, and now there's a lot of operational security risk. Then it's what folks are saying is painful for them when they're working on their security stack. And some of those pain points that we discovered and just being really close with our customers, we've worked with over 500 protocols in under 5 years, is we have many point solutions and many logins. It is hard to differentiate between providers in the market and how they're different. And doing so, we've all identified collectively, provides more operational and general security risk. If you don't have the best tool or a completely suitable, very good tool to do certain jobs, and you're unable to determine that, that's a problem. The more logins that you have that aren't cohesively, and within the security stack, those pieces of Swiss cheese, the less cohesive they are, the more opportunities, the more gaps there are. Gaps in this space typically equal risk. There's a chance for something to happen there, right? So finding the balance between to not over-index towards Web3 jargon, but between centralized tooling and decentralized tooling is something that we sought to solve for customers. And I think we're doing that with Magnus. We've got a bunch of first party tools that we've built that customers are really loving, like our PR reviews, where we're able to take the best security researchers in the world that everyone's come to know and love and the most talented in the world and plug them into different places in the security stack to get a higher ROI to the left of your audits, to the left of your bug bounty, to the left of your audit competition, as well as efficiency tooling between all of these providers. Then we've built out the other side of the platform, which is the third party integrations. And we've done some work with you guys as well in the audit space, which has been fantastic and for customers. And so being able to combine these things under one roof where they continue to get different security perspectives, they're not losing that decentralized approach. They're not hiring us for a complete vertical integration of their security stack. You don't want that either. But they are minimizing the gaps within their security stack and they're able to have monitoring, have their bug bounty program, have their audits, whether it's with us or with one of our great partners and providers, use our AI agents that are trained on the largest vulnerability data set in the world. And then these efficiency tools to bring it together. So that's really what we were trying to solve to simplify my answer. Many point solutions, bringing them under one roof without sacrificing that variety of security points of view, and then finding a balance there.
Awesome. Moving on to the next question. I feel like you guys are doing God's work here in terms of negotiating between white hats and protocols because those things can get really tense. Like I've been on both ends and I know how frustrating it is for security researchers to report something and basically have everything played down. And then also on the protocol side, I realize how stressful it could be. So, if there's one interesting story that you want to share with us that you've been through, sort of like a war story, that would be really cool.
Yeah, I might speak a little bit from a high level rather than specific war room, but I mean we've done thousands of mediations, right? And it's going to be very cliche, but the most successful ones are where both parties walk away a little bit bummed out, which is not our favorite customer experience, but it is usually the case that if everybody's a little disappointed, we found the right sweet spot there. It goes back to my first point. I think the end of the day, we have multiple stakeholders involved here, multiple customers from Immunefi's standpoint, which is the security researchers and the projects. And, we can't live without either of them. And it's getting to the point where they can't live without each other either, right? So we're all in this together. We presume good intent from everyone who's providing a responsible disclosure and everyone who's putting up a bug bounty program. But to your point, it can get hairy. And it goes back to my first point, which is start with the customer. And in this case, we do have to split the interests a little bit. So one of the things, we moved a few years ago to change our commercial model generally so that we could remove any appearance of perverse incentive from, higher bounties benefiting us more. And then the second thing that we try to do is just stay completely objective in the case and measure it generally on three axes, right? What is the magnitude of the attack? Is the attack valid at all? Really the first one. And then what's the feasibility of it? So do you have to spend $10 million to make a dollar, or do you have to spend a dollar to make $10 million if you were a black hat? And that's what it comes down to. And then where it really gets dicey is when there is a disconnect between what the security researcher and the project deem as value of the disclosure. So, the hairiest things that we typically see are, well, I could do this and steal X amount of dollars. And when it gets into that, well, would it be worth it? When you get into that feasibility limitations piece, would it be worth it for an attacker to do so as a reason to maybe bring the bounty down beneath the 10% rule or beneath the max critical is where we tend to find the most intense negotiations as far as that goes. For every escalation that we have within a mediation, which are not the same thing, a mediation is just a request for help. Many of them end very amicably. Most of them do actually. But for every escalation within those. We've thousands of cases that get solved quite amicably without mediations or with very quick and easy ones. Even within those escalations, 9 out of 10 are, end in a positive way. Like I said at the beginning, where maybe everyone's a little disappointed. The project would have liked to have paid a little less. They didn't think it was that valuable. And the researcher would have liked to get a little bit more because they thought it was very distinct and interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I think that happens probably quite often, would
Yep.
be my guess.
Yep. It does. It does. Yeah.
Nice. I think like this is also a great opportunity to ask you, what do projects get wrong when they, you know, have their bug bounties, be it on maybe Immunify or maybe somewhere else? Maybe they have their private one. Like, what do you think, you know, is something that they could do better?
Yeah, I think the number one faux pas, if you will, which is more rare than I think people think it is let me check the box on the bug bounty for doing just that, checking the box or using it solely for marketing purposes. I'm okay for people to market their security when they're serious about it. And we do vet our projects generally when they come on to assess how serious. We have turned away customers who we do not believe to be serious in terms of security because that's not going to benefit anyone at the end of the day. And yes, of course, there's been times where we've found projects who haven't fit that mold, and we've removed them from the platform. But I think that's the first major faux pas, which doesn't happen that often. The other one that I think is just like much more salient for security conversations like this is not doing all the things to the left of the bug bounty to minimize the chance of you having found valid criticals. I believe in the future of bug bounties. I think they're a critical part of the security stack. It's just there's so much more you could do prior to getting to that and paying out, a few $100,000 or in some case 7 figures, whether it be, continuous security reviews during your CI/CD development processes, the audits themselves, running an audit competition to de-risk your bug bounty and also get to know your SRs and build a community before you have a bug bounty. There are just so many things you can do. And then even once you're on mainnet, you can enlist monitoring tools. You've got the ability to have constant on-chain protection as well, and not just rely too heavily on your bug bounty as that final catch-all. The last I would say is that not enough people are enabling safe harbor. It's free, it's fairly riskless, and the small risk that you might be adding from like a legal and compliance standpoint is easily outweighed by the benefit because it really is a break glass in case of emergency situation. And I think that the industry generally should be adopting safe harbor practices much more commonly than we're seeing.
Some alpha there from Mike regarding safe harbor. Cool. Then I think like this ties into it, but like, is there a metric that you pay attention to that most people overlook when judging success in security, BD, and customer relationships?
This is an interesting one because I could pick from a bunch, and there are a lot of KPIs. I think the one that I always find to be the most important at every stop in my career, and this was whether I was in financial services and I wanted to expand the business, or I was in financial technology, or now sitting here in Web3 crypto. This hasn't changed either, which is if I can ask a partner or a customer with confidence to recommend me to be hired by a new protocol or project that is considering me, that by far is the best metric is referenceability. It's a little harder to track because you do have to have some input for the customer, and sometimes you don't get the answer you want. They're saying, right now I might be having a little bit of a rough time, and I'm not really comfortable doing that at this moment. That's okay too. I mean, if you're going to be successful in any industry, you have to be able to take the good and bad feedback. Thankfully, it's not that common. We have a lot of customers who do references on our behalf that we can provide for folks. We have a lot of partners who would do the same, which has been fantastic. And that's the biggest North Star metric. So you can do your NPS scores on the customer success side. You can look at how much you're selling. But the fact of the matter is, if I can expand my sales team to include people that are using our products and services on an everyday basis, and they're happy to do so, That is by far the best metric. And then you could unpack that to figure out why that's going well, or if you're running a business where that's not going as well, or you haven't kicked that off quite yet, how you get to do so and what you need to track to be able to do so.
Definitely. Yeah. I concur. Now we're down to the last part of the episode, which is the rapid fire closeout. So
Right.
we
Lightning
have a
round.
few questions, the lightning round. So please, if possible, try to keep it to one sentence. The first question that I love is, name one tool or a piece of tech that you would not be able to live without.
Oh, it's gonna sound so lame, but it's my Kindle.
Oh, we got the same
I
answer
I have it
before.
in my back pocket, even for short drives. I have it in my back pocket in case I like get somewhere early and I could just read a few pages. It's it's probably a really lame answer.
It's not. It's not. We got the same answer in episode 2.
That's
So,
really funny. All right,
yep,
I've
yep.
got a new friend. I need to meet that person.
Yes. Awesome. The next question is, if you could name one word that best describes the future of bug bounties.
Essential.
Oh, wow. That's a good one. That's a good one. Um, Also, what advice about sales or customer success um, do you think is actually good to follow?
Sales or customer success, good to follow. Yeah, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but it really is just starting with the customer first and working backwards. That is always the
Yeah.
best thing to do. And being honest. Actually, that's a really good thing too, especially in security. If you've hit the point of not being able to help someone, telling them that you are unable to help them is an okay thing to do. But in most cases, if you're building your business, right, then there is a way to help. If it's, yeah, there are times where I've called you and said, I can't help this person, but I think you can. And you've been able to do that. So even just that little bit of help, even if it's just to like guide them in the right direction, never a bad thing to do. So I guess that was more than a
Yep.
few sentences, but
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. I really like you mentioned this before in one of the previous questions, and I think it's really spot on. Now we have the question from our last guest, and they asked, "What is your favorite feature in your current product?" And I'm guessing that is Magnus.
oh yeah, that's true. Okay, the first thing that came to my mind was just it was almost like, I mean, it is a feature, product, or a service, but I was just gonna say our security researchers because they're just so talented and interesting to interact with. And um, but if I had to say a specific feature right now, it's our AI powered and security researcher powered pull request reviews. Getting that ROI to the left of your audit or after your audit to mitigate those things or to mitigate bugs that you found and having the agent crawl on the biggest repository of Web3 vulnerabilities has been really cool for folks to start using and come to life. And next to our security researchers, can't really beat it.
Definitely. That's really cool. And to close it off, do you have a question for our next guest?
Yeah, I would like, so I've been dabbling in crypto since like 2015, 2016 as a hobbyist, but only got in professionally, 2.5 years ago now. So I would like the next guest to tell me what do they think was like the Friendster or Sony Betamax of crypto? Like, what is something that jumps out in their mind that was ahead of its time and should have been wildly successful, and something's either found its place or the industry has gone in a different direction? I would love to hear that, and uh, it might help us identify what the next one is so we don't lose that opportunity.
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. And I'm sure there were a bunch of those, even throughout the short time span of crypto. Thanks a lot. Thanks again for being on. And please tell us where everyone can find you and maybe send you a DM or learn more about what you guys are doing.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a really fun time and a great experience. You can find everything you need to know about Immunefi at immunefi.com. IMMUNEFI. Immunefi.com. And you'll see more about the tokenomics at the foundation website, immunefi.foundation. We're on Twitter. We've got a great Discord for security researchers that people can join the community. And all of our socials are at the bottom of the homepage. You could find me on Twitter at Mike_Immunify. And you could see me on the conference circuit almost always. So feel free to reach out. Would love to talk security, or if there's any folks I can help in sales and CS, I'm always happy to do so.
Amazing. Thanks again, Mike. Have a great one.
Yeah, thanks for having me.